Today, we're delving deep into the entire history of Prince Eddy's life, his controversial reputation, his sudden death, and the enduring mysteries that refuse to die with him. Was it a simple tragedy of a pandemic, or is there a more complex, hidden story waiting to be uncovered? Buckle up, because this is a journey into the heart of Victorian secrets and royal cover-ups. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Let me know in the comments below. Prince Albert Victor Christian Edward was born on January 8, 1864, at Frogmore House, Windsor. He was the eldest son of Albert Edward, Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII, and Princess Alexandra of Denmark. This made him Queen Victoria's grandson, and crucially, second in line to the throne after his father. The hopes of an empire rested on this tiny baby. From early on, however, Eddy wasn't exactly a shining star. His education, alongside his younger, brighter brother George, the future King George V, was a source of concern. Their tutor, John Neil Dalton, reported Eddy's mind as abnormally dormant. He struggled with academics, was easily distracted, and showed little intellectual curiosity. Think of it like this. You have two students in a class. One, George, is diligent and picks things up quickly. The other, Eddy, is well-meaning, but seems to be perpetually daydreaming, his mind wandering. That was Eddy. He attended Trinity College, Cambridge, but left without a degree. He then embarked on a military career, joining the 10th Hussars. While he looked dashing in a uniform, and was nicknamed Collars and Cuffs for his stiff, high collars, his military aptitude was considered limited. He was charming, gentle, and good-natured, but lacked the drive and intellect expected of a future king. Whispers followed him. Was he truly fit to rule? Beyond his intellectual shortcomings, Eddy's name became entangled in more serious controversies. The most significant was the Cleveland Street scandal of 1889. This was a major public scandal involving a male brothel operating at 19 Cleveland Street in London, patronized by prominent aristocratic men and post office messenger boys. While never officially charged or publicly named at the time, strong rumors implicated Prince Eddy as a visitor to the brothel. Several key figures involved either knew Eddy or were connected to his social circle. Letters from Lord Arthur Somerset, an equerry to the Prince of Wales, and a known client of the brothel, hinted at Eddy's involvement in the frantic efforts to keep his name out of the papers. Imagine a modern-day celebrity caught in a compromising situation. The PR machine would go into overdrive to manage the fallout. This was the Victorian equivalent, but with the heir to the throne. The government and royal family were desperate to avoid a scandal that could destabilize the monarchy. Key witnesses were allegedly paid off or encouraged to leave the country. The press, largely deferential to the monarchy back then, was mostly kept in check. While concrete proof of Eddy's direct involvement remains elusive and debated by historians, the association stuck, further damaging his already shaky reputation. It painted him as, at best, indiscreet and easily led, and at worst, involved in illicit and scandalous activities. This cover-up culture is important because it sets a precedent for how the establishment might handle other embarrassing truths about the prince. Despite the concerns, Eddy was still the heir presumptive. The priority was to find him a suitable wife to provide stability, guidance, and most importantly, an heir. Queen Victoria was particularly keen. Several European princesses were considered. There was Princess Alix of Hesse, but she wasn't interested. She'd later marry Tsar Nicholas II of Russia and become Empress Alexandra Feodorovna, a tragic story for another day. Then there was Princess Helene of Orleans, a French Catholic princess. Eddy was reportedly smitten, and she with him. However, her staunch Catholicism and the Pope's refusal to grant a dispensation for her to convert or marry an Anglican heir to a Protestant throne scuppered that romance. Finally, a suitable candidate was found closer to home, Princess Victoria Mary of Teck, known as May. She was sensible, intelligent, and seen as a steadying influence. Though perhaps not a passionate love match initially, it was considered a dynastic masterstroke. Eddy proposed to May on December 3, 1891, at Luton Hoo. The engagement was announced, and a wedding date set for February 27, 1892. For a brief period, it seemed Eddy's future, and that of the monarchy, was looking a little brighter. He had a respectable fiancée, and perhaps marriage would settle him down. But fate, as they say, had other plans. In late 1891 and early 1892, the world was in the grip of a deadly influenza pandemic, sometimes called the Russian flu. It had swept across Europe and America, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. It's not unlike what we've experienced more recently, a virulent illness that respected no social class. In early January 1892, while celebrating his 28th birthday at Sandringham House, the royal estate in Norfolk, Prince Eddy fell ill. Initially, it seemed like a bad cold, but his condition rapidly deteriorated. High fever, difficulty breathing, classic symptoms of severe influenza developing into pneumonia. The best royal physicians were summoned, but 19th century medicine had little to offer against such an onslaught. His family, including his parents, his brother George, his sisters, and his distraught fiancée, Princess May, gathered at his bedside. Queen Victoria received anxious telegrams. Despite a brief rally, Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale, died on the morning of January 14, 1892, just a week after his 28th birthday and a little over a month before his wedding. The nation and the empire were stunned. The official cause of death was influenza leading to pneumonia. This was widely reported and accepted. The outpouring of public grief was immense. His funeral at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, was a grand, somber affair. Princess May was left a grieving fiancée. In a twist typical of royal dynastic planning, she would later marry Eddy's younger brother, Prince George, who was now second in line to the throne. George and May would go on to become King George V and Queen Mary, grandparents of our late Queen Elizabeth II. Eddy's death thus directly shaped the future of the British monarchy. So, a tragic but straightforward story of a young prince cut down by a pandemic? Well, not for everyone. Almost immediately, alternative theories began to circulate, fueled by Eddy's existing reputation in the Victorian penchant for secrets. One of the most persistent alternative theories is that Prince Eddy didn't die of influenza at all, but of syphilis, a sexually transmitted disease that, if untreated, could lead to severe neurological and physical degeneration. Tertiary syphilis or neurosyphilis. Why this theory? Firstly, Eddy's rumored lifestyle. The Cleveland Street scandal, whispers of visits to brothels, and a generally dissolute reputation made him a plausible candidate for contracting such a disease. Secondly, some proponents argue that the symptoms described in some accounts of his final illness, though officially attributed to flu, could also align with the final stages of syphilis. Thirdly, the motive for a cover-up is strong. Syphilis was a deeply shameful disease, associated with moral degeneracy. For the heir to the throne to die of it would have been a catastrophic scandal, far worse than the Cleveland Street affair. The royal family would have had every reason to conceal it. Evidence for this theory is largely circumstantial and based on interpretation. Some biographers point to vague contemporary diary entries or letters that hint at a more serious underlying illness. For example, Sir Henry Ponsonby, Queen Victoria's private secretary, wrote of Eddy having fevers that were not always flu. However, Eddy's official physicians, Sir William Broadbent and Sir Dighton Probyn, were reputable, and their diagnosis of influenza and pneumonia was clear. There are no surviving medical records that definitively prove syphilis. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing and the other half possibly altered. The royal archives are vast, but also carefully curated. Opponents of the syphilis theory argue that if Eddy had advanced syphilis, his physical and mental deterioration would have been far more obvious in the years leading up to his death. While he wasn't brilliant, he was still performing royal duties, traveling, and was deemed fit enough to be engaged. Also, the 1892 influenza pandemic was genuinely deadly. Many young, healthy people succumbed. So, influenza remains a very plausible cause of death. Now we enter even more sensational territory. Could Prince Eddy, a grandson of Queen Victoria, have been Jack the Ripper, or somehow involved with the infamous killer who terrorized Whitechapel in the autumn of 1888? This theory largely originated with Thomas E.A. Stowell, who in 1970 published an article in The Criminologist hinting that Eddy was the Ripper, based on the private papers of Sir William Gull, a royal physician. Stowell claimed Gull had treated Eddy for syphilis, which had driven him mad and led to the murders. This was then sensationally popularized by Stephen Knight in his 1976 book, Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution. Knight wove an elaborate conspiracy involving Eddy, a secret marriage to a Catholic commoner, a royal baby, blackmail, and a plot by Freemasons, including Sir William Gull and senior police officials, to silence the blackmailers, the Ripper's victims, on behalf of the Crown. It's a gripping tale like a dark Victorian detective novel, and for a while it captured the public imagination. The idea of the Ripper being a member of the royal family was shocking and tantalizing. However, the theory has been extensively debunked by historians and Ripperologists. Here's why it doesn't hold up. Alibis. Prince Eddy has documented alibis for the dates of most, if not all, of the canonical Ripper murders. Court circulars, private diaries, and newspaper reports place him at royal residences in Scotland, Balmoral, Sandringham, or on official duties far from Whitechapel. For example, on the night of the double event, September 30th, 1888, when Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were killed, Eddy was at Balmoral with Queen Victoria and other guests. It's like saying a suspect was in New York when the crime happened in London. Logistically impossible. Stowell's evidence. Stowell's claims were vague, and he died shortly after his article, his supposed source papers conveniently destroyed by his family. Sir William Gull himself suffered a stroke in 1887 and was largely incapacitated by the time of the Ripper murders, making his involvement in a complex murderous conspiracy highly improbable. Lack of credibility. Knight's theory relied on a supposed informant, Joseph Gorman, Sickert, whose claims about his grandmother being Eddy's secret wife and his mother being Eddy's daughter have been widely discredited as fantasy. Physical and mental state. If Eddy was suffering from syphilis-induced madness to the point of becoming a meticulous serial killer, it's highly unlikely he could have maintained his public royal duties without his severe condition being noticed by everyone around him. So while the Eddy as Ripper theory makes for a dramatic story, it's almost certainly fiction. There are other minor variations, that Eddy was involved with one of the Ripper's victims, or even that he was a target of the Ripper, which makes no sense given the victims were impoverished women in Whitechapel. None of these have any credible evidence. A less common, but still whispered theory is that Prince Eddy's death was faked. Why? Perhaps to remove an embarrassing, syphilitic, or mentally unstable heir from the line of succession without the scandal of publicly admitting his issues. He could then live out his days quietly, somewhere remote, while the world mourned him. This is pure speculation, a classic trope in conspiracy theories about famous deaths. There's absolutely zero evidence to support it. The logistics of faking the death of such a high-profile royal with so many family members and officials present, and then keeping him hidden for the rest of his life, would be monumental and virtually impossible to keep secret. Plus his family, especially his mother, Princess Alexandra, were genuinely devastated by his death. Her grief was profound and lifelong. So where does this leave us? The official cause of death, influenza complicated by pneumonia, remains by far the most probable explanation. The 1889 to 1892 pandemic was a real and deadly event, and Eddy was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The royal physicians were competent, and there's no compelling medical evidence to contradict their diagnosis. Why then do the conspiracy theories persist? Firstly, Eddy's own less than stellar reputation and the genuine secrecy surrounding events like the Cleveland Street scandal created an atmosphere where cover-ups seem plausible. Secondly, there's a natural human desire to find deeper, more complex explanations for the sudden death of someone so prominent, especially an heir to the throne. It's more dramatic than he just got sick. Thirdly, the Jack the Ripper case itself is an unsolved mystery that attracts all sorts of speculative culprits, and a royal suspect is the ultimate sensational twist. Prince Albert Victor's legacy is a strange one. He was a prince who never became king, overshadowed in life by his perceived inadequacies and in death by the lurid theories surrounding his demise. Yet his early death had a profound impact on the British monarchy, paving the way for his more capable brother George to become King George V, a monarch who guided Britain through World War I and laid the foundations for the modern House of Windsor. In a way, Eddy's tragedy may have inadvertently strengthened the monarchy in the long run. Prince Eddy, unfortunate victim of a pandemic, sufferer of a shameful hidden illness, or however unlikely entangled in the darkest crimes of his era. While the evidence points overwhelmingly to influenza, the myths of Victorian secrecy and the allure of a good conspiracy mean the questions surrounding his death will likely linger. What do you think is the most compelling theory about Prince Eddy's death? Or are you convinced by the official story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this dive into royal history and mystery fascinating, please give this video a like, subscribe for more historical deep dives, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the past. Thanks for watching.